Hello again. As you know, I am Eli the Computer Guy, and today's class is Biometric Access Systems Introduction. So we're going to start talking about biometric access systems today and what is actually going on. Now, when we start talking about biometrics, this is one of those really cool technologies that is so cool. Movies and media and television and comic books have glommed onto it, and then they have just been filling your guys' heads with all kinds of crap. Basically, you take a really cool piece of technology, you run it through Hollywood, and then what comes out the other side really has nothing to do with anything. Unfortunately, everybody thinks it does. It's kind of like one of those things that at this point in time, everybody thinks they know what's going on with biometrics, and many times people don't. So this class, we're going to be talking about these biometric access systems so that you start to understand what is going on and what we are talking about. Biometrics is becoming more and more important because technology has come to the point where we can use biometrics very easily now, and it is a lot more cost effective for security than a lot of other things that are out there. So basically, what are we talking about when we are talking about biometrics? We are talking about having access control systems that somehow scan your physical features or your voice to determine who you are. So this might be a fingerprint, this may be facial recognition, this may be what's called iris recognition, or this may even be voice recognition. So something physical about you, it is going to scan to try to see if you are allowed to have access to something or not. So you can use a lot of different things for biometrics. Very recently, the new iPhone 5S came out with the little biometric finger reader on it, and some folks have used different parts of their bodies to see if that would work. And in fact it does, because really the computer doesn't in fact care if it's your finger or it's another appendage on your body. All it's doing is scanning for certain features, and if those features happen to exist, that's a-okay with it. Now, the first thing that comes up with biometrics, and the first thing that scares everybody when we start talking about biometrics, is people start worrying about the system keeping records of your biometric signature. So basically, when you have some kind of facial scanning software, facial scanning lock, you're worried about the lock keeping pictures of your face. If you use a fingerprint scanner, you're worried about the system keeping a picture of your fingerprint or a recording of your voice. Now, the first thing to understand is things have come along with biometric equipment. But the original, not really the original, but most biometric equipment up till very recently actually did not store the data the way that you would think. They did not store pictures of your fingers. They did not store pictures of your face. So a lot of people were really worried, have privacy concerns about, I don't know whether I want lots and lots of pictures of my fingerprint out there. Well, for a lot of systems, that's not actually in fact the case. That is not what the biometric lock or the biometric system is doing. So essentially, when you really get down to the biometric systems, the big thing that you have to remember is it's not really looking at pictures. What it's doing is it's looking at points. So whatever it is you're offering the biometric system, it's not actually looking at a picture. It's not actually scanning the picture. What it's doing is looking for points. So basically, if you look at somebody's head, it's not looking at a picture of the head. What it does is it digitizes the head for very specific points on your body. So maybe where your ears are located, where your eyes are located, where your nose is located, where your chin is located, how far your forehead is from your chin, how far your nose is from your ear. And all of this math goes into the system. So basically, think about it as it's more, what it's doing is it's assigning like longitude, latitude points to certain features. So it can say the nose is at this point and is this far away from the pupil, and the pupil is this far away from the corner of the mouth, and that mathematical equation means yes, the person sitting in front of the system right now is the person that's supposed to be here, or no. So the big thing to understand is with the original, or the most of the biometric systems, it's really just doing mathematical equations. It's not looking at pictures. Even when you do something like your fingerprint, right? So to make you feel better, and to make you feel like the system is actually doing something impressive, when you scan your finger, many times it'll show you the picture of your fingerprint. Well, it's not actually, most of the time, it's actually not actually storing the image of your fingerprint. What it's doing is actually looking for the swirls and ridges and all those things in your fingerprint. Again, assigning a little mathematical equation to that, and then seeing if that matches any records in the system. So what it's doing is it's turning your fingerprint, your face, your voice into a series of numbers. It then takes that series of numbers, runs that across a database, and goes, oh yes, this number does exist and it has this permission. So this person is allowed in or is not allowed in. So the first thing to understand with these biometric systems is that for the most part, they don't actually store the image the way that you think it would. Now this is something that is changing, and therefore this is something that you should keep your eye on and think about when you start deploying biometrics into the real world. Now remember, any amount of information that you store is an amount of information that could be compromised by hackers, which means you could be held liable if hackers are able to grab the information. So with new biometric systems that are coming out, these systems are now able to actually store information the way older systems were not. So they are able to store a lot of pictures. And so one of the things when you go out to biometric system for your company, you have to think about, do you actually want those images stored? Remember, any data that you collect and that you store, you are liable for. So I'm one of those guys who really doesn't like to get sued, really doesn't like to get drawn into court. So if I don't need to store data, I don't see any reason why I should have the liability for storing data. So if you go out to buy biometric equipment, one of the things that you should look at is, does it store these images? Because if it does, you may have liability that you don't want. So that is one of the things that you should really think about with these biometric systems is, do you want the liability? Do you not want the liability? Now, another thing that comes up when we start talking about biometrics is I do not know what it is with all the security folks out there. Oh my golly, you want to talk about one piece of technology that gets bashed on more than any other technology known to man, it is biometric scanners, biometric access control. As soon as any company comes out with biometric access control, all of a sudden, all the security nerds and all the hacker nerds in the world descend upon that technology and try to show you how they can lift a fingerprint off a wine glass and then use that with a hot dog to gain access into a system. I am not denying this fact, but it seems like they go a wee bit overboard on trying to prove how vulnerable biometric systems are. So one of the things that you have to think about in the real world is you have to realize that these biometric systems are not perfect. So a lot of people think, well, you know, your fingerprint, only one person in the world has your fingerprint, so if you use a biometric access control system with a fingerprint, you're absolutely secure. It is true. Somebody can lift that fingerprint off of a wine glass, stick it to a warm hot dog, and actually get past these biometric access systems. So that is one thing that you have to think about. But when you are thinking about that, here's a couple of things to kind of allay your fears on that. One is you have to think about how vulnerable normal passwords are. Somehow everybody always picks on poor biometrics, which can be circumvented, but then they forget that most people have really absurdly simple passwords. If I was worried about hackers getting in my systems, I would be far more worried about people knowing somebody's password than I would about the fingerprint. Again, if you have employees and they're sitting down at a computer, how often in your life have you or somebody you known gone to somebody else and go, oh, I need to get in this computer to check something online. Can I have your password? And then the person goes, yeah, whatever. It gives you the password and then you log in. You know, how hard is it then to scribble it on a little note and now you have the password forever? What I would bring up is I have never in my life seen anybody go, oh, I need to get into this computer. Hey, can I borrow your finger? Sure, thunk. Here's my finger. Get what I'm saying? So one of the things you have to think about with biometrics is, yes, there are vulnerabilities to it, but don't get foolishly dumb. The other thing with the biometrics is a lot of times it can be a lot easier for access control when you have people remembering passwords, when you have people, you know, having to change passwords a lot of the time. Remember, one of the things when people focus on security is a lot of times they ignore usability, right? Passwords are a security procedure that prevent bad people from getting in, but are supposed to allow employees to actually do their work. How much lost time is there with people forgetting their passwords, having to change their passwords, locking themselves out of their account, all of that kind of stuff that costs the company money. When you have a biometric system and you can just go boop, it's really hard, again, to forget your finger. I have never in my life known anybody to go, oh, I forgot my finger at home today. Or, oh, what was the date of birth of my finger? You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't forget your finger. Then the final thing, when you're thinking about access control and you're thinking about biometrics, is everybody's always so scared and worried about this, is you can do something what's called multi-factor authentication. So this is not done a lot. For some reason, again, everybody likes to bash on biometrics, but then multi-factor authentication isn't used. And what this is you can use multiple forms of authentication. So you can use the fingerprint scanner with a face scanner. Or you can use a fingerprint scanner with a code. So you can do multiple things. Now the nice part with that, if you do something like a fingerprint scanner with a code, is because people will most likely pick a lot simpler code, but you still need a finger. So you need the finger, and even the code is simple, you still need to know the code, which it still gives you a form of security, a decent form of security. So these are some of the things that you should be thinking about with these biometric systems, because again, every time any kind of biometrics come out, you know, like say the iPhone 5S right now just came out, and everybody is just bashing the hell out of its poor little scanner on there, when really, that's a bit... I would feel better with people's fingerprints versus the passwords. One of the other things that I will tell you too, when we start talking about fingerprints, is everybody always uses their index finger for fingerprinting. So if you are worried about this, if you are worried, you know, from a security standpoint, oh no, a hacker is gonna steal a fingerprint, you can also have people use other fingerprints, right? Because basically with these systems, you normally use one finger, but there's no reason you can't use your pinky finger or this weird little finger right here, right? Like everybody always, again, and this is one thing for you guys to be thinking about, this is what I keep trying to push for you guys, is to think outside of the box, is why not use that finger? Because I can tell you, with all the hackers out there in the world, if they're trying to gain access to the biometric systems, they are going to they're going to think that it's the index finger. If you use this gnarly finger right here to do your access control, I am betting you 9 times out of the 10 the hackers aren't even going to think about that. They're going to be thinking about this finger right here. So that's one of the things to think about. So okay, so we've been talking about this. We've been talking about what biometrics is. We've been talking about some of the security implications with it. Now the next thing that we need to be talking about is we have to talk about how these biometric systems actually integrate into your overall infrastructure. Again, this is one of the problems that we get into when we start talking about biometric systems, is everybody focuses on the biometric system, everybody focuses on the scanner, and then they don't realize it's connected to the rest of your infrastructure. They think like that scanner is like everything. Whoa, the scanner, right? And the scanner is only the scanner. And so that's a big thing to understand with these biometric systems, is when you're dealing with the biometric scanners, like when you actually go to a door, when you go to a computer and get scanned, What happens there is you are actually interacting with just the scanner. So what happens with that scanner is, whether it's your face or whether it's your finger or whether it's your voice, you somehow access it and you give it the information. You say hello to it, you give it its fingerprint, you look into it. It then takes that information, it turns it into numbers, and then it ships those numbers off back generally to a main control, kind of like a server or computer. So basically it scans your face, creates the data about what your face is. It says, okay, this face equals this number, sends that number back to the main little control center computer. That computer then runs through its database to see if that number corresponds to any user accounts in the system. If it does, then it accesses the next thing for whatever is supposed to happen. So with biometric systems, when you think about biometric systems, most people think about biometric door access. So basically access control for doors. Can you open a door or not? So what happens is the scanner scans your information, turns that into numbers, ships that numbers back to a control unit. The control unit goes, yes, this person is allowed in. It then sends a signal to the door lock system. The door lock system then unlocks the door that you're trying to walk into. So the big thing with biometrics is you have to realize this is a larger system than you may be thinking about. You have the sensor, plus you have the control unit, plus you have whatever other systems that it interacts with. Now with these access control systems, these biometric access control systems nowadays, what is really cool, what is really awesome, is what is just really, really fancy pants when you think about it. What's really cool is many of these systems will even now tie into Active Directory. So you will hear me talk when we're talking about computers and we're talking about technology, we're talking about networking, we're talking, many times I talk about something called convergence, right? Convergence is where all these systems that used to be siloed, used to be independent, can now very easily talk to each other and many times uses the same network. Well, what's really, 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 really amazing now is you can have these biometric access control systems for things like doors actually connected into Active Directory so that you can assign permissions to a door the way you assign permissions to files and folders as a network administrator. We are not going to go into that in this class today, but these are the things that you should be thinking about with things like access control systems and biometrics and all of these really amazing things that you can do with this stuff. So not only, you know, it's not just a scanner. It's not like you've got a scanner and then that's it. You've got the scanner that sends the information back to some kind of control unit that can then talk to other systems, you know, door access control, Active Directory, all of that kind of stuff. So a biometric scanner can give you access, can be the first point to give you access to a door or to a computer or to a file and folder. So these are some of the things that you should be thinking about with these access control systems. The final thing that you should be thinking about with access control systems, because these biometric systems, a lot of people think these biometric systems are very, 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 very expensive, right? They're like, oh, Eli, biometric systems are so expensive. My clients, I can't afford to use these things. One of the things that you should realize now is these biometric, these sensors actually are not that expensive nowadays. You can get them, depends on the price, but you can get them anywhere between $300 to $800. Now I know that seems expensive. You're like, well, Eli, that's $300 to $800. But when you're dealing with a building, you're dealing with one of your clients, if you go and you actually buy a normal access control system, so in order to access doors, so like when you walk into a building, you know how you have like a little card thingy and you swipe it by the door and then that allows you in? Well, what you need to realize is each one of those cards costs money. I don't know what they cost anymore. They used to cost up to $20. I think they're probably like $5 now. So if you have a company with 1,000 employees, you have to buy at least 1,000 of those cards, and then you know your employees are going to lose cards, so you really need to buy like 2,000 of those cards, which is going to cost you a lot of money one way or another. If you use these biometric systems, you don't have that expense. The biometric system itself is much more, or the biometric scanner itself is much more expensive, but then you don't have to worry about buying the cards. So that's something that you should think about. So I've got a little biometric sensor that I have. ZK Access sent me, so I just kind of want to show you what's going on with these biometric sensors. Again, basically just to solidify, drive the point home with what's going on. So this is their, I don't know what the hell is this called. I don't know. So ZK Access, if you guys can see that, ZK Access. they do, like Biometric Systems. And so this is one of their units they sent me in order to play around and test with. And so basically this is what you get when you get one of their sensors. So I think this one here is somewhere around like the $800 version. Now again, once you start talking about computers and you start talking about technology, people can do all kinds of fancy stuff with it that goes outside the bounds of an introduction. So this actually, I don't know how well you can see it, but this actually has a whole computer system built into it. So not only is this the scanner, but you can actually add user accounts, you can look at reports, you can look at logs, you can look at a lot of stuff with this. So you can actually connect this directly into your network or directly to another device to allow access to something. So this is not just a scanner, but it's kind of like a scanner and a control, that control server all in one. So the first thing we have on here is we have the fingerprint scanner. So you can see it's got that nice little green laser, and all you have to do is you press your finger on here and it scans, and it's that quick. So again, one of the things that they play up in Hollywood, when you watch one of the movies in Hollywood and they have biometric scanners, they're always so slow. You know what I'm saying? Like the hero runs into the CIA building to break in, and then they have this long, drawn-out pause as the scanner does whatever the hell it's supposed to do. One thing you should realize is that's all Hollywood. Real biometric scanners are quick. Let me see here.
Thank you.
See, it's that quick. So it's not long and drawn out. Now the cool part with this thing too is not only does it have that fingerprint scanner, but it actually also has a face scanner. So let's see if this works for me. And to show you.
Thank you.
See, look at it. See, it's that simple nowadays, and that relatively quick. So again, when you're thinking about things like biometrics, you're probably thinking about the face, or you think about the fingerprint, but you think like the face scanning technology, oh, that's way too complicated, that's way sophisticated, that's really expensive. But to show you, it's really not. Nowadays, with this kind of technology, it's pretty simple and easy to use. So basically, if I walked up to a door that was set up for this, I could just look into this, it would scan my face, and it would allow me to walk in. I mean, if I had things in my hands and couldn't get to my key card or couldn't get to my fingerprint, I could just look this square in the eye, and it would let me in. These are the amazing things that you should be thinking about with these biometric access systems. So that's what's basically going on here. So when we talk about biometrics, there's going to be more and more and more and more and more of this. Biometrics is one of those things, it's here. It's not going anywhere. There's only going to be more of it because it is so easy to use. It has now become so inexpensive, and these sensors are so reliable now. They're just really, really, really good things. Now, the final thing that I will leave you with when you're thinking about these biometric scanners and you're thinking, wow, I wonder if I could use those for my clients or for my own business, is one of the things that people don't think enough about is whenever you're going to be buying these systems, one of the things you have to look at is what is the rate of false positives and what is the rate of false negatives. So this is very important for you to think about with these biometric systems. Not only do you have to think about speed and cost on all that, you have to look at false positives and false negatives. What false positive means is if somebody comes up with a face that looks approximately like mine, will the sensor think that is me? So false positives means it recognizes the wrong person when they get scanned, whether it's a voice scan, whether it's a finger scan, whether it's a face scan. So a false positive is how often is the wrong person allowed in. Actually, one of the more dangerous things for you, especially when you're dealing with clients and customers, is false negatives. Now again, this is one of those things. When you get security people out there, when you get hackers out there, they all scream about false positives, false positives, false positives, false. What if it allows the wrong person in? Oh no, I'm going to pull out my hair. One of the things they don't talk nearly enough about is false negatives. False negatives is when the right person scans their finger, like I just did with once, and it says, no, you're not allowed in, you're not the right person. False negatives can be far more detrimental to the company and to your personal career and reputation than false positives. Because basically, if you have the CEO, if you have people trying to do their jobs, and they go to interact with these systems and it refuses to allow them access, you can have lots and lots and lots and lots of problems. So this is another one of those things. Again, when we talk about technology, when we talk about security, there is science and there is art. So one of the art components of installing these biometric systems is, what is your tolerance for false positives, and what is your tolerance for false negatives? So as you put these things in, you have to think about that. How well is the client going to deal if sometimes a CEO is not allowed into the CEO's office? Because remember, biometric systems don't do any amount of good if the CEO gets really pissed off, walks into the server room, and rips the control unit out of the wall, right? If you rip the control unit off the walls, throw it on the floor, and stomp on it, the biometric sensors aren't going to do you any help. And so that happens a lot with CEOs. Basically, you get the consultants that come in, they install these biometric sensors, they say, we want to make sure this is secure as possible. Unfortunately, it starts sending out way too many false negatives. Secretaries get pissed off, dock workers get pissed off, the CEO gets pissed off, and all of a sudden that $10,000 installation, somebody just walks in the server room one day and rips out the power supply, and no more biometric system. So again, this is one of the things you have to think about. So from the legal standpoint and the usability standpoint, whenever you're going to be buying these biometric systems, you have to think about, do they actually keep pictures of the information it's collecting, the face, the fingerprint, whatever. Think about that. Again, the least amount of data it keeps, the better for you. If one of these systems, all it does is digitizes the information and keeps the digitized information, a hacker can't do a lot with that digitized information. If it actually keeps JPEGs or moves or whatever of what's going on, that can cause you liability in the future. And then the actual false positives, false negatives, again, that's one of the things you have to think about. If you're interested in these biometric systems, nowadays there are tons of them. Again, ZK Access sent me one of these things. I'm still playing with it to see what it's like. But this is one of those technologies that became rock solid. It became affordable. It became everything but mainstream like 8 years ago, and so now we're just getting it to the mainstream. So this is not bleeding edge. This is not cutting edge. This ain't anywhere near the edge. This is tried and true, robust technology. If you buy it from good vendors, you will most likely have a good outcome. If you buy it from knockoff places, it's probably going to be cheap crap and it's probably going to break. But that's all what equipment you buy. That has nothing to do with the underlying technology itself. So, as you know, I am Eli the Computer Guy. Today's class was Biometric Access Systems Introduction. As always, I enjoy teaching this class and look forward to seeing you at the next one.